So the Nyana de Yoma of Sukkos turns out to be also current events. And this is as just started. The Nyana de Yoma of Sukkos is mamish current events. I know this because second pasuk of the Haftarah of the first day of Sukkos, V'asafti es kol hagoyim el Yerushalayim lamelcham. All the nations gathering against Yerushalayim. So, which is happening these days. The whole wars across the world, the focus, the attention of the whole world, it revolves around Yerushalayim, and there's also an increase, of course, in attacks against Yerushalayim from Kol HaGoyim. Now, what the Navi doesn't tell us is why are they Nesaf on Yerushalayim Lamachomom? Why are they fighting? What are they fighting about? Nor how to fight against them, nor how to win this war. So what's our role? How should we vanquish these enemies that are Nesaf for Yerushalayim Lamachomom?
It's like some shiur.
Okay. Okay, perhaps. Yeah, maybe we do nothing. And notice also, the possibility we do nothing, notice that it says V'asafti. Even they're not doing anything. V'asafti es kol hagoyim el Yerushalayim. It doesn't say V'ne'esfu. It says, I, Hashem, will gather them. So we need to understand that as well. How are they being gathered by Hashem without them even being agents? What does it mean that Hashem is gathering them? We'll see in Micha, it's even more explicit. That they're coming without even understanding what they're doing. Furthermore, the question, what is the connection between this Asafti and Chag HaOsif? Later in the same Haftarah, it says, see, the Haftarah starts. First pasuk, the booty will be divided. This booty is because Vasafti is kol hagoyim Yerushalayim lamachom. And later it says V'usaf chel kol hagoyim saviv zohav v'chesef u'v'kodem l'rov ma'od. Because Hashem gathers them all Yerushalayim lamachom, they're going to bring all their wealth, and then when they are vanquished, all their shalom will be divided by us. That's also being nesef. Now, I'll bring you a raya that this is connected to Chag HaOsif. In other words, the Asafti, we're supposed to understand that the Asafti of the Navi, Asafti is kol hagoyim Yerushalayim lamachom, is a medrash on, or an explanation for Chag HaOsif, and it's connected to the mitzvah of Aspecha B'garnech Mikvecha, mitzvah of Chag HaSukkos. Right to this is from Micha Perek Daled. In Micha Perek Daled, it also talks about the various nations that gather against Yerushalayim. V'ato ne'esvu alayich goyim rabim. Goyim rabim gather against you. Ha'oimrim techen afesachas b'tzion einenu. They say, oh, we're going to see the downfall of Tzion. V'hema lo yodu machshavos Hashem v'lo havinu atzosei. They don't know the thoughts of Hashem. They don't understand His counsel. Ki kibitzom ke'omir garna. Because really Hashem is gathering them like you bring the omir, like you bring the bundles into the gairin. So the Navi is making a mashal, just like the omir is brought into the gairin. And what's it being brought for? To be threshed. So to the goyim rabbim that are nesfu alayich and think v'sachas b'tzion, they think they're going to see the downfall of Tzion. They really don't understand what's happening. Really, they're being brought there. They think they're coming for some reason. Really, Hashem is bringing them. And Hashem is bringing them like the Omer comes into the Gairin. Next pasuk, Kumi v'doishi bas Tzion. So they're going to thresh them. They're the Omer. Tzion is the thresher. And Hashem is going to give them the power to crush the Amim Rabbim. And their wealth will be Kaddish to Hashem. This is talking about Sukkos, because the pasuk prior to this is Micha Perek Daled, pasuk Yud. The pasuk prior to this, to the pasuk I read of Neswa Life Goyim Rabbim, goes like this: Ato seitzi mikirya v'shachant basode. Leave the city, dwell out in the fields. Uvas ad Bavel shom tinatzeli. Okay, leave the city, go dwell in the field, come to Bavel, and from there you'll be saved. Shom yigalech Hashem mikaf oyevayich. So the message to Tzion is, leave the city, dwell in the fields, go to Bavel. Steht in Medrash in the Psikta like this. Why do we make Sukkos after Yom Kippur? Because on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Hashem judges the world. And perhaps Klal Yisrael was judged for Gullus. So they make a Sukkah, and they exile from the houses to the Sukkah. And that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu considers that as if they went to Gullus in Bavel. Shenemar, this pasuk. Seitzi mekir v'shechant basada, leave the city, go live out in the field. That's a reference to Sukkah. Uvas ad Bavel, that's somehow like going to Bavel. Shom tinatzeli, and from there you'll be saved. Shom yigalech Hashem kafle. Okay, so you see that the Medrash is reading this pasuk to be about Sukkos, and the next pasuk says the same v'nesvu alayich goyim rabim, and then it makes the point that they are like the Omer, which is the Chag HaOsif. So you see that v'osafti es kol hagoyim l'shalom l'mochama, it's connected to the Chag HaOsif. It's connected to the mitzvah of Sukkos, because the message to Tzion is go live in the Sodeh, which is to go live in the Sukkah. Don't be in the city, rather live in the Sukkah. And that's going to be the response and the schos that's going to save them from the enemy. Okay? Now, as the pasuk says in Micha, Vehema lo yodu machshavos Hashem, they don't know. They don't know. They're coming and they don't understand why they're coming. And that's the same for Asafti, es kol hagoyim el Yerushalayim la'machoma. Hashem is bringing them. They don't. They're not making the decision to come. Lo yodu machshavos Hashem. And by sitting in the sukkah, the pasuk says L'man yedu. So there are those that don't know. The goyim that are nesaf al Yerushalayim la'machoma are lo yodu machshavos Hashem. They're gathering against Yerushalayim, and they don't understand. Lo yodu. And the sukkah gives us L'man yedu. There's another asifa, another gathering, which is associated with Sukkos, and that is Kehillah. On Sukkos, there's a mitzvah of Hakil. So just like the goyim are nesfu on Yerushalayim, there's a mitzvah of Klal Yisrael to be nikal in Yerushalayim. There's a haftarah for second day of Sukkos, for Chutz La'aretz, is Vayikohalu ala Melech Shlomo, v'yeches on the bechod. So there's a mitzvah of Hakil. We read about a kehillah, like Kalu HaMelech Shlomo B'Yachas on B'Chag. There's a kehillah that happened on Sukkos, and Divrei Koheles ben David, that we read on Shabbos. So the Medrash says that he's called Koheles because Dvarav Nemu B'Hakil. Divrei Koheles ben David Melech Yerushalayim, and that's why it says Melech Yerushalayim in this passage. It doesn't say that in Mishlei, Ashir, because it has to do with a kehillah, which is associated with Yerushalayim. So there's a gathering to Yerushalayim, there's an asifa to Yerushalayim, or against Yerushalayim, and then there's a kehillah in Yerushalayim. I think it's in a tzib who says, I think it's mashmak that the Medrash, that Koheles is Shlomo Melech's Hakil drasha. The Medrash says, why is it called Koheles? Because Dvarav Nemru B'Hakil. He was the king of Yerushalayim, so he's the king of the capital, and when he spoke, everyone came together to him. But this was his drasha, Shabbos Chol HaMoed, this was Shlomo Melech's drasha. That's what he says. So we have okay. That's all the Torah that everyone says on when we read Koheles. Has to make you happy, right? The real happiness, the connection with our royness, which is it's all levels. Okay, so we have asifa and we have kehillah. What's the difference between asifa and kehillah? Asifa is used for inanimate objects. Those that are lo yodu machshavos Hashem. Grain is nesaf. Grain could be nesaf. And people could also be, just watch the court. People could also be nesaf. The nesvu kol hagoyim l'shalom, nesvu alayich goyim rabim, who are lo yodu machshavos Hashem, they're like grain. Kehillah is a word that's not used for inanimate things. It's only used for bnei das. So there are the lo yodu machshavos Hashem, those that don't know, they're the grain. They're like the grain, that's nesaf. Those are the goyim that are nesaf sav Yerushalayim. And then there's bnei Yisrael who are nikal in Yerushalayim, and those are supposed to be L'man Yedu. There's those who know, and those who don't know. The ones who know Hashem, and the ones who don't know Hashem. So we got to understand how we were supposed to wage this war against the questions we started with. The main question is, after day one, Sukkos. Why are they fighting? Navi doesn't say. And how should we wage the war against them? But now we understand that the essence of the war is, how are we from the Nikolim and not from the Nesaf? In other words, the nations are NPCs. That's what? Yeah. That's yeah. The other Navi tells us, Mahal. Right. Yeah, it's true. The Navi says.
It's also Lashon Hasif, isn't it?
In Micha, that same parak, it actually uses Lashon Hasif. It says, yes. Yes, so I'm saying Asif is used for people and for inanimate objects. Kehillah is used only for people.
No, it still makes sense, especially the prophet. Most of Israel doesn't know Hashem to a proper degree at that point.
Okay, right, because the Navi, it's interesting, you have to look around. Here the Navi says, the one who's limping. Meaning those who are not so robust and not so strong in their connection to Hashem. Hashem is nonetheless going to bring them. V'asher hariyosi, that pasuk. The limping one. And this pasuk Asher hariyosi, the Gemara Brachos brings, this is like Hashem excusing Ukayisov for all their sins because he's the one who did evil to us. He made the Yitzhahara. So this is Hashem saying all those who are limping spiritually, he's going to bring them back, right?
Like 30 seconds
of what was happening so far. Okay, so we have this pasuk that says in Zechariah V'saftis kol hagoyim l'sham l'chama, and the question is, why are they waging war, and how should we fight them? Okay, and what's the connection between this and Chag HaAsif? How I know it's connected to Chag HaAsif? Because in Micha there's a similar pasuk about the goyim gathering right in Yerushalayim, and Hashem says they don't know the machshav is Hashem. They don't know Hashem's thoughts because He's really bringing them like grain to be threshed. They think they're coming to war, really they're coming to be threshed, and they don't understand. Okay,
so it's Asif.
And the pasuk before that says, "Go out from the city, go live in the field," and that's like you'll be in Bavel. And the Medrash says we live in a sukkah because living in a sukkah is that pasuk. Leaving the city and going on the field is referring to living in the sukkah. Living in the sukkah is like going to Bavel, and that's atones in case it was decreed on us to be Golas. So you see that's connected to Sukkos, and they don't know the thoughts of Hashem. And Hashem is manipulating them. So I want to understand what is the nature of that manipulation. How is Hashem manipulating them if they don't know what they're doing? And the pasuk begins also. He said, "Asafti es kol hagoyim." Hashem is bringing them, which is parallels that pasuk in Micha that says they don't even realize. They think they're coming for one reason. Really, they're being led by the nose by Hashem. And there it says, "Lo yodu machshavos Hashem," and we have leman yedu deresechem. So we have these people who don't know what's going on in the world, and we have us who do know. And I want to understand the nature of that
We're still up to the questions.
What?
We're still up to the questions.
Those are the questions. And I said also that there's Kehelas, there's a Kehillah in Yerushalayim, I think we're here for that. There's a Sifa, the Goyim Anesaf, around Yerushalayim, and then there's a Kehillah in Yerushalayim, different Kehelas, Ben David Melech Yerushalayim, and Hakel, and Vaikal, Olam Melech Shlomo, and there's a difference between Kehillah and Asifa. Kehillah is Laman Yedu, only Yoidim, only B'nai Das are Miska, or whatever the word is, Nikal, and those, but even inanimate things like grain is Nesaf. So there's Kehillah and there's Asif. Okay, now let's understand the Medrash. The Medrash says that in case Golus was decreed on us on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so we go to the Sukkah, and that way Hashem considers it as if we were going to Bavel, and somehow that's what we need. So let's understand that. The pasuk says that the reason why we sit in the Sukkah is the man needed to say. What does the Medrash mean when it says this whole elaborate idea that we go to the Sukkah because in case we agreed to go to Golus? Therefore, well, it's like a symbolic Golus. What is this? Pater it up. And also, what's the significance of Bavel? It says, so you live in the Sukkah, it's like you live in Bavel. Okay, as I said in the Medrash, I have a custom in Chutz La'aretz to stay in my Sukkah as much as possible. As much as possible. Because the Gemara says in Ksubis, and you'll understand this after I explain this. The Gemara says in Ksubis, just like it's also to leave Eretz Yisrael, the Bavel, so it's also to leave Bavel, the Sha'ar Ratzis. So you see, there's a mile of being in Bavel. The Gemara says, Kol Adar Bavel Kadar Be'etzah, which we're going to explain why this connects to the Medrash. So if you want to get this Sukkahs like Bavel, then you have to, it's also Ratzis. You don't have to. Okay. Yeah.
So you also have to still sit down when it's
Is what?
So the yichud, so we already have Yeved Seichel.
Right, exactly. So now we have to figure out what's the sukkah next. So this is exactly what we're talking about. This is the sukkah that's for galus, which we'll explain now what this medrash means. But that's also a sukkah next. So and how the two things are together. We'll have to get to that. So let me explain to you what this medrash means. So the kasha of the medrash is the medrash says it's very nice, interesting chat. Maybe we go to galus or we go out to the sukkah. The pasuk says l'man nidul deraseitim go sukkah chat. Furthermore, what does Bav have to do with it? The Ma'aseh says the pasuk says we all know
How's the
that.
pasuk going there?
Here you can look at the pasuk. Micha Perek Dal pasuk Yud. I'll read it aloud, and then you can look at it. Chuli v'goichi bas Tzion kayeleda, tremble like a yeleda. Ki ato seitz imikirya v'shachant basode. Leave the city, go and live in the field. Uvos ad Bavel, come to Bavel. Shom tinotzeli, shom yigalech Hashem b'kaf lever.
And the measure says the hadith that wants we will go to Babel.
Yes, the measure says you go to Bavel, and this pasuk the Gemara Kesubos brings that Bavel doesn't see Chevli Mashiach. If you live in Bavel, you're not going to see Chevli Mashiach. Because the pasuk says, "Come to Bavel, Sham Tinatzei." Bavel is a special place. Okay, Bavel is a good galus. It's a galus where you're safe from Chavli Mashiach. It didn't happen. Meaning we left Bavel. Whatever. That's another story. In other words, the Gemara's model and Tanchum like that. They're supposed to be in Bavel until Mashiach, and there was no Chavli Mashiach in Bavel, which I'm soon explaining why that's the case. So the pasuk says that we sit in the sukkah l'man nidul deraseitim go sukkah chat. Doesn't say anything about galus. How does the Medrash reading it into that pasuk? Because think of the pasuk. The pasuk says that Hashem put us in sukkahs when He took us out of Mitzrayim. It doesn't say that we have to remember that we were in sukkahs in the desert. It says when Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, He put us in sukkahs. It's connecting it to Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's very significant that it's connected to Mitzrayim because the pasuk says Vayisu b'nei Yisrael meram says Sukkos. They went from Mitzrayim to Sukkos, and according to Waman the Omar, the famous two tzadim about what Sukkos means is Anania Kavod or Sukkos Mamish. But in the Mechilta, I think it's in the Mechilta. There's a third sheet that Sukkos Hashafti means the place called Sukkos. What's the place called Sukkos? Why is it so significant that they were in a place called Sukkos? Because really, when you leave Mitzrayim, you should go straight to Eretz Yisrael. But they weren't ready. So they had to go they had to go to Sakri's route. And they had to go to another Galus, in addition to Galus Mitzrayim, which didn't prepare them for Geula or for Eretz Yisrael. They had to go to another Galus. This one in the Midbar, very different kind of Galus, but Galus nonetheless. And that Galus will prepare them for Eretz Yisrael. So what does that tell you then? That not every Galus prepares you for Geula. Mitzrayim, the Galus Mitzrayim did the opposite. Because Galus Mitzrayim risked entrapping Bnei Yisrael, as we all know. They were almost there, and very few. Very hard to extricate themselves from Galus Mitzrayim. So there's a big and very important lesson in that. That Galus is necessary for whatever reason, but you should know that Galus can be very dangerous, can be ma'akiv, some kinds of Galus in which you can never get out of. So therefore, this is something that Bnei Yisrael has to deal with. The problem of Galus, and the fact that Galus can sometimes keep them behind, they can never get out of it, is a problem that can occur every year. Shema Nigzah Bnei Yisrael Chayv as Galus, and once again they're going to deal with the problem of how do we do Galus without getting stuck behind. And the pasuk says, here's the Eitzah. I want you to be in a sukkah, and living in a sukkah, even when you're in Galus, Sichveis America, or wherever Galus you're in, is like Galus Bavel. What does that mean? It's like Galus Bavel? Because Galus Bavel, unlike Galus Mitzrayim, that's the good Galus. Bavel was awesome. It's amazing. We're successful there. Chalador be Bavel, Kiludor be. So that's not said about Mitzrayim.
It almost ended in disaster, though, that point. It was a pretty close shave.
Right.
But that was not a ruchniistic disaster. It was a gashmic.
Right, exactly. We don't find this notion that 1 out of 500 people stayed behind. Everyone was invited to return. Now, not they didn't. They should have. Only a minority did. But it wasn't the same kind of, being Nitma and Mitzrayim where they were lost forever.
And in the end,
in fact, the yeshivas were in Bavel throughout the whole Bayis Sheni.
And it ended up being a Hatzalah after the Churban.
Correct. And then came Talmud Bavli.
The
art school introduction to the Talmud. What? Right. They came back from Bavel.
Came back.
Those were the losers that came back from Bavel. The dregs of the the lower class.
Even the drivers.
They were lower class, like the Gemara says in Kedushin. Ezra emptied out all the he made bubble like Silas Nakia. The elite stayed behind, as the Kuzri says, Sefer Ikram says. The elite stayed behind, the Chacham stayed behind. So Art Scroll in its introduction to the Talmud says the I forgot the lashon, something like the well-kept secret of the Bayesheni. You know this?
Yeah.
Is that throughout Bayesheni there was great and flourishing communities of Torah and yeshivas and Bava. Throughout Bayesheni, we never heard of them. Why we never heard of them? It's another talk, another discussion. Why we never heard of Chacham and Bava? They're just anonymous. Okay, but they were there, and Bava was amazing. So Bava is the example of the good Golas, the one we could say called Dar Bava Kadar Bet Yisrael.
Yaitrim went up also. What is the son?
The Chorish Ramazgir.
Yeah.
Correct. Mm-hmm. As on the way up, but it's the same thing because what happened was they left early. Hashem took them out of Eretz Yisrael early, which tells us that even though you could theoretically be in Eretz Yisrael, there's a point in being in Bavel and preserving the Torah there, and that's why they didn't come back in Bayesheni because they saw it as their mission to preserve the Torah. That's a discussion. But the point is that Golas Bavel is the paradigmatic Golas, which you can be there. And nonetheless, not lose. To read the Tzarech Aliyah, you do not lose your connection to Eretz Yisrael. Not the contrary, but Kol Adar B'Bavel Kadar B'Eretz Yisrael. And Ad Kedei Kach, the Gemara says that the Ksherim in Bavel are buried in Eretz Yisrael. The Ksherim in Shairots get to be buried in Bavel. It's considered like a Makom Kodesh. Of course, no longer the case. Rabbi Yaakov Edmond says it's only as long as the yeshivas were there. We don't consider it to be a holy place anymore.
The language is also holy.
Some Sefer talks about the mile. There's no mile to Bavel after Harifa Elach. There's no mile to Bavel in Torah. The language also. You have the Gemara Pesachim. Why did Hashem send it? So the Gemara Pesachim talks about why is Galus Bavel a good Galus? Because the language is carved Lashon Torah. The Gemara Pesachim says, or because we're originally back from there, so we go back to our ancestral home. So Bavel is the place that's although it's not Eretz Yisrael, you're on the doorstep of Eretz Yisrael and you have the connection to Eretz Yisrael. So there's a way to go to Galus and risk severing your connection to Eretz Yisrael. That's Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is Adarabah. It's also to return to Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is an awful place. And there's a kind of Galus where you can go there and you can retain your connection to Eretz Yisrael. So now what the Medrash is saying is like this. Just in case Klal Yisrael goes to Galus this year, so they need to learn that you can't just be a passive participant in Galus and let it affect you, because then you might end up being like Mitzrayim, where only 1/500 to 1/50 got out. Like the Gemara in Sanhedrin says could happen in Chevli Mashiach as well. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says could be 1 in 500 according to Amandam, if I remember correctly. And Chas v'Shalom. So what's the eitzah to that? How do you go to Galus and not get sucked in? Make a sukkah, which means Pashut. You're not a member of society. You turn your back 7 days a year. You turn your back to the polis. Teitzi Mikiria. You're not a member. You're not a citizen. You're living in the field like a wild animal. To show that you're not. Yeah, there's a political theory on this. Libertarian one.
Oh, like Hilltop Youth.
Hilltop Youth, say that. But in Chutzlah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, the Hilltop Youth are being misyash. I disagree. They're striking roots, making new roots. This is to go live like a wild animal. I have nothing to do with the city. I don't have a house. Seitzi Mekir v'Shachant Basodeh, to sever, to disconnect from the whichever galus you may find yourself in. So therefore the Medrash, the Psikta, is saying the same thing as Why? Why do we have to know that? The Pasuk doesn't tell us why. We all fill it in. Of course, the Medrash is saying a beautiful shot. It's important to know because that teaches us a very important lesson. That you could be in Galus, and even when the Galus is over, you might not get out. You might not be ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. You might need another Galus that's a safe Galus, where you're with Hashem, instead of being mutma between the guys. And that's what the Sukkah does for you. Just like when the left Mitzrayim, Hashem had to put us into the Midbar and then an intermediate stage, so do you if you're in a Galus. Make sure you're not in Galus Mitzrayim. Make sure you're in a Galus like in the Midbar, where you just don't have any land. You don't have Eretz Yisrael, but you don't have the other land. You're with Hashem. And that's what the Sukkah does. That's the Medrash. Beautiful Medrash. Okay. So that tells us what it means. Kilu b'bav. Now let's go back to Naftali. Because you have to know which means that when they left Mitzrayim, they weren't able to go straight to Eretz Yisrael. They needed to first Sukkos, and all the Tachanos in the Midbar, starting with Sukkos. And the reason why that's an important message to remember is because that teaches us that there's always that Galus, even when Galus is over, we might not be ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. the hashpah of Galus might affect us that we can't go to Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, in order to avoid that, in order to avoid that happening in case you're in Galus again this year, you don't want that to happen to you this year. You don't want to be like Chamushim all of Bnei Yisrael time. So you want to make sure that your experience of Galus is like the second shlav of Galus, which is not Mitzrayim, but the Midbar, and that shlav is like Bavel, because you're in Galus or you're with Hashem. Right? Galus Bavel is way different than Galus Mitzrayim. Galus Mitzrayim we had Toma, and Galus Bavel we're learning Torah.
The middle was like bubble.
Midbar was like Bavel, right? Exactly. And the model for a Bavli kind of Galus is the Midbar, and that's what the Sukkah does for you. You could be in whatever country you're in, but the Sukkah severs you from that country and makes you like.
So you're going like on the that you're going down for that one or
Which one number? That Sukkos means this place Sukkos?
Yeah.
No. Sukkos means booths. Also. First of all, even if Sukkos means booths,
why?
the first Tachana in the Midbar is called Sukkos. What?
You're already in the Midbar.
When?
What are you?
No, because it's important to know that even though when I should take them to Eretz Yisrael, I said, no, you're not ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. First you have to live in a booth. So you see from that in order to have the kind of Galus that doesn't take you away from Eretz Yisrael, but rather makes you ready to go to Eretz Yisrael, you have to live in a booth, meaning you have to have a Galus where you're not connected to the land that you're living in.
That's not what's going on when you're living in Sukkos in the Midbar, is it?
Sure, why not?
Because there wasn't a function.
No, they didn't have a country. No, but Sukkot Shafti means that in order for them to go to Eretz Yisrael, they had to first not have a country.
And
therefore, in case you're in Galus, they gotta make sure not to have a country. What?
That type of way of living is the
Right, that's symbolized by a booth, because that means there is no country. So similarly, if you're in Galus, whatever, you go live in a booth.
Why is that bubble? Why is it not connected to the land symbolized bubble?
Why? What's the question?
Why is it symbolized bubble over any other thing? The fact that you're saying that I'm going into Galus, I don't intend to be in Galus. Why
Right.
is that equal bubble?
So I'm saying it equal Bavel because that Bavel was the historical Galus where we were able to get out as soon as the time came. Yeah, it's interesting. It's also okay. You have to think. Meaning again, when I mentioned before, the history was supposed to go that there wasn't supposed to be anything past Galus Bavel. Galus Bavel was supposed to end in Gilgal. So, which sort of answers your question. Meaning Galus Bavel is that's it. There's only other Galus to talk about. You talk about time and Bavel. On the other hand, the measure that says that go to the Sukkah and it's as if you went to Bavel, is that measures in Bavel? Like, are you in Bavel? So, okay, something to think about.
You can also ask that even Galus Bavel wasn't supposed to happen. Chizkiyahu would have been Zeichen to Mashiach.
Right. Okay, so what? So, right. But still, the point is that in case the Sukkah trains us for Galus. That's the measure saying. It's training us for Galus in case we're supposed to be in Galus. And so we'll see what that means exactly. Galus doesn't necessarily mean, huh?
We're trying to make a Sukkos so nice.
Right. No, so we have to figure that out. Right.
It doesn't have to be mamash.
By the way, 10 Tvachim, if you ever think about it, 10 Tvachim. Zayin al Zayin, that 10 Tvachim, it's mamash like a little animal. He's just living like an animal for 7 months. Like mamash living in a barn. Not even a barn. Refes Boker is what does Mishnah say? Refes Boker is 6 by 4 arms. Mishnah and Bogas. Refes Boker, he's whatever. It's nothing. Tiny little room. And you think about back in the day, what materials they had, whatever. They just grabbed whatever they had and they crawled in and they ate them, saying that's v'shachant basada. And then you have to make that beautiful. I mean, you have to have the v'shachant basada and you have to make noy of the v'shachant basada. You can't lose the v'shachant basada. Okay, good. So far, so good. Hope so. Okay, right in this Haftarah. It says the following. It says that Hashem is going to go fight, as you suggested. Hashem will go fight. But I want to help him. Still asked how we help him. Hashem is going to help. Hashem is going to fight. Sorry. Yom Krov. And we're going to run away. Hashem is going to return to come fight against these goyim that are Nesach on Yerushalayim. And because he's fighting against them, Hayazesim is going to split into two. Some sort of earthquake. Why do I say that? Because the next passage says you're going to run like you ran when there was an earthquake in the days of Uzziah. The days of Uzziah Melech Yehuda, there was an earthquake, and this earthquake is associated with Uzziah being Maktir Teres in the Heichel. He came to be Maktir Teres, he decided he wants to be Maktir Teres, and he became a Mitzayra, and there was also an earthquake at that time, when he did that. Okay, thank you. And this earthquake figures in Zechariah, it figures in Omos, which we'll get to soon, Amos was Menabe, said his Nevuah, Shnasayim Lefnei Harash, the first, second paragraph now, Pasuk in Amos. First pasuk in the days of Yeravam, Shnasayim Lefnei Harash, and he said Hashem is going to roar from Tzion. So there was an earthquake, which was like Hashem roaring, very important in the Nevi'im. And here too, in this Haftarah of Sukkos, it says we're going to run like we ran from the Rash in the days of Uziah. Uvo Hashem Elokai Kol Kedoshim Imach. Hashem is going to return, going to enter. So Hashem is coming back. Imagine Nabi's telling us to do. We have this image of Hashem returning to Yerushalayim. All the holies are with Hashem, all the malachim are with Hashem, and his whole entourage. So therefore, Har Hazeisim splits, and there's going to be something like an earthquake, and we're all going to run. Okay, and then the nations are vanquished, and so on and so forth. And the way it's going to be commemorated, all the remnants are going to have to come back and keep Sukkos. Right? Familiar with that stuff there. First day of Sukkos. Okay, so we have an earthquake. We have everyone running. When do you run when there's an earthquake? You run out of the city. Stay away from the buildings. And to commemorate this is going to be, you have to keep Sukkos. Sukkos is when you don't live in buildings, don't live in the city, like it says in Micha. Right. Because the way the war is going to be won is that there's going to be this earthquake, and we're going to be running because of a rash.
Murder no.
Yeah, but that's somehow going to. Because look, the Yatza Hashem v'nilcham b'goyim ahim b'koyim yilachem abiyam krav v'amdu ragla v'yim al ha'azeisim. So Hashem is waging war against them. The way He's going to wage war against them. Now we know how the war is going to be won. The way the war is going to win is Hashem is going to appear, and all the holies are going to come back with Him. And because Hashem is appearing, there's an earthquake. Because of the earthquake, we run. The people, Yisrael are going to run, like they ran back in the earthquake in the days of Uziah. And to commemorate this, the Goyim are going to keep Sukkos. So I'm connecting that Sukkos is very appropriate for a victory to happen with an earthquake. Because when there's an earthquake, you run. You leave the city. And the Pasuk says that. The Pasuk says, why is that so significant? Half of them will be out, but half of them will still be in the city. Why is that so significant? Because then if there's an earthquake, then you have to leave the city. Like it says in Micha, in order for us to be saved, we have to not be in the city. That's what I'm suggesting here with what's happening in Zechariah, and that's why, and we'll see it's more unfortunate other Nevi'im, I think. We'll see if that works. So basically, if there's an earthquake, where do you want to be? You want to be in a sukkah. She goes, okay, the sukkah will also fall down probably. Put it back up. It's not going to hurt you. It could be a piece of bamboo in here. It doesn't happen to you. Okay, so let's think about this. What does this mean? If Hashem is coming into a city, and that makes a rash, then you want to not be in the city, and you want to not be in a building. You want to be in a flimsy kind of structure. This earthquake, let's see. The Pasuk says when Hashem is going to come back to the city, all the holy ones are going to come back with Him. And we're going to run away like we ran away in the earthquake of the days of Uziel. Let me tell you a little bit about that. So Uziel decided he wants to be Maktir Ketores. And he becomes a Mitzvah, and there's this earthquake. And this earthquake is what Yeshaya the Navi experienced. Correct me if you remember something different, but we learned this together. So Yeshaya Perek Vav. Shnas Mois HaMelech Uziel v'Eretz Hashem Yoshev HaKisim HaVanis. Shnas Mois HaMelech Uziel, Rashi says that this Mois means he became a Mitzvah. And this happened. What happened? What did Yeshaya see? Vayanu Amos Asipim. Everything started shaking. Here, listen to this. Listen to the description of an earthquake. Because there's more questions say this. Because an earthquake happened when Uziel tried to be Maktir Ketores. I'm soon explain to you why. There's fire in the Heichal. Srafim Oimdimi Ma'aloi. Kodesh, 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 Hashem Tzavakas Melech Lo Etzkavodi. Remember what it says in Zechariah, Uvo Hashem Elokai Kol Kedoshim Imach. All the Kedoshim come when there's an earthquake, and Hashem comes back and says, all the holies, all the malachim come back with him. In Yeshaya 2, there's an earthquake, and Kodesh, 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 and Vayanu Amos Hasipim, the what's it called? The mezuzahs of the doors start shaking. So Yeshaya's vision which is interpreting obviously as a vision of Hashem, was an actual earthquake. What happened? What?
Asham earthquake?
Yeah, because things fall over and it starts smoking. It's fire start. Okay, so the Srafim, the fiery angels, are associated with the Metzias of an earthquake, and the message is Hashem is coming to the city, all the holy ones are with him. Now, what does this mean? What does that have to do with Uziel being Maktir Keteris? Let's say Pash Bekitzer. Because Uziel is coming to be Maktir Keteris, who's he trying to emulate? Korach. We don't have to be kind to Maktir Keteris. Korach says, Kala Edokum Kedoshim, and there's an earthquake by Korach as well. Right? Because what's Korach trying to do? He's trying to say everything's holy. If everything's holy, and Hashem is present everywhere, so why are we here? Why are people here? If Hashem arrives, then there's an earthquake. And what that means, we'll soon explain what that means deeper. But in Pasha, now we're on the level of a moshel. If you were inviting Hashem to be here, then there's going to be an earthquake, and goodbye. That's what happens by Korach.
No, there's a Korach saying nothing.
Korach saying like this: don't keep Hashem just there, bring Hashem out here. That's it. Okay, fine, you bring Hashem out here, so why are you here? How do you stand Hashem? You run away from Hashem. What are you doing in Hashem's place? Okay? But also Pasha that there's an earthquake if Hashem arrives. If Hashem arrives, there's an
Can you
earthquake.
define Matan Torah as an earthquake?
Interesting. Maybe.
Because you could. You have also the Osher, and you have the top of the mountain splitting open.
Keteris
Is to be what?
The high Shechina.
Keteris is to hide the Shechina, right? Very good.
Korach saying
Very good.
Hashem's here, so yeah.
Very good. Right. Keep it on like a pirates.
Yeah.
You have to hide it. You can only appear. Only will appear when there's an honor to conceal him. Who says that?
What?
Ibn Ezra, maybe.
No.
Yeah. So the cloud then conceals, right? Okay. So the Keteris is a cloud, and done right, the Keteris will conceal. Done wrong, there's going to be an earthquake. This is what happens by Korach. This is what happens by Uziah. And that's why Zechariah, when he says Hashem is actually coming back to Yerushalayim with all the holies with him, all the holies, Kol Kedoshim Yimach, is like Kodesh, 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 Shem Tzivakis, and it's like Kol Ha'edek Kulam Kedoshim. So there's this ideal that, everyone's holy, and Hashem is everywhere, and He's amongst us. And, okay, very nice, theoretically. But, if you're not ready for it, it's an earthquake that destroys you. That's what happens in the days of Korach. That's what happens again for Uziel. And even in Zechariah, it's not so bullshit. We have to run out of Yerushalayim. Now, let me explain to you this business about running out of Yerushalayim. It says in Yechezkel talks about the return of Hashem to Yerushalayim as well. The return of Hashem, that's the Yechezkel has a vision of the bias, what we call the bias shlishi. It's a vision of a bias. And there it says the following. It says, Kvoida lekesol ba, Hashem is coming. Hashem is coming into the bias. Okay? And here's a message. The message, Hashem speaks to him, tells him the following. I'm going to dwell b'seich v'nesel la'olam. V'lo yatamu oid beisis Hashem kachi. They're not going to matam Hashem kachi anymore. They are in the kings. How are they matam Hashem kachi? This is the key passage. B'sitam sipam SCP umuzuzasam etzem muzuzasi. V'akir beini u'beinehim. You know how the matam kachi? Because they put their saf, remember, they put their saf, their doorposts, or their doorsteps, right next to mine. And they put mezuzah sam, etzah mezuzah si, vakir beini u'beinehem. But there's a wall dividing between them. They build their houses all the way abutting the Kodesh, the Kodesh. That's v'timu es shem Kodesh. Ata yirachaku es anusam, v'shachanti b'sechem loni. If you want v'shachanti b'sechem loni, fine. But then they can't be there. So they can't be in the city. You know, the tumah of the Mikdash is Sipam SCP was Hashem has a house. We have a house. I live next door to Hashem's house. That's the problem. If you want Hashem to dwell in you, Olam, says Yechezkel, you can't. You have to be out of the city. And what Yechezkel does also is the whole Yerushalayim becomes only Kahanim could dwell in Yerushalayim. If I remember, anyone here knows Yechezkel? It's been a long time. Only Kahanim could dwell in Yerushalayim. Which I think is in the davening of Yerushalayim, Beis Mikdash, Simchas Olam. The whole Yerushalayim is going to become Beis HaMikdash.
Yeah,
Oh yeah? Have a drum? That Beis HaMikdash, the whole Yerushalayim is going to Kodesh. This is Yechezkel's thing. We have a problem. Hashem has a problem. That why should our doorposts be next to His and there's just a wall dividing between Him and us? That's Tumah. So now, putting this all together. Micha says you have to leave the city. You have to leave the city, dwell in the field. Zechariah says it's going to be a rash when Hashem returns, and you're going to run away and you're going to keep sukkahs. Shechant basad is sukkahs, right? The sukkah is where you want to be if there's a rash, if there's an earthquake, little earthquake. And Yechezkel's big problem with us is that Hashem can't dwell in you forever because you have houses in Yerushalayim, and that's a problem. You can't have houses in Yerushalayim. What could you have then in Yerushalayim? You have sukkahs in Yerushalayim. Now this is an interesting thing. There's it says there are some scholars, Bible critics, I guess you can call them, sort of, who kind of like this. They say, you know what sukkahs is? It says in the Nehemiah that when they came back, they discovered the mitzvah of sukkahs, and the pasuk says they went and they made sukkahs. Ish al gagoy ubechatzuseim bechatzus beis elokim. So they made sukkahs bechatzus beis elokim. So they say like this: oh, sukkahs. You know where the mitzvah of sukkahs came from? Very pashut, because when you're oil regal, where you live in, you make sukkahs. That's where the mitzvah of sukkahs comes from. Right? So, like many things that the Bible critics say, this if you integrate it into a deeper truth, it ends up being actually pretty interesting. But if they take it on the shitchiyas, so it's nothing. But on a deeper level, it's very true. Why? Because now we see that in order for Hashem to dwell in our midst, we can't have a house. That's what the Navi says. Because we can't have a house. We can't have a dios kavah. Hashem coming to our midst makes a rash. We need a sukkah. So the symbolism of having a sukkah in Yerushalayim, it's not just a practical thing. Yeah, maybe it's a practical thing also. You have to have a sukkah because you come elaregi, you need a sukkah. But the symbolism is that the proper kind of kedusha, the proper return of Hashem, which is what's envisioned in the vision of Zechariah, requires that we are in sukkahs and not in houses, because there might be an earthquake. And now I want to explain to you what the sukkah is. Okay? Actually, I want to show you one more marmakim, and then we'll explain what the sukkah is. One more marmakim. This is an Amos Perak Tes. I mentioned before that Amos said his nevuos 2 years before the rash. It says in Amos Perak Tes. He also saw Hashem on the Mizbeach, and Hashem said, "Hach hakaftar, hit the kaftar, whatever that means, something on top of the roof. V'yirashu hasipim, let the sipim be royesh." Remember, Yeshaya said, "Vayanu amos hasipim," and Amos, who was misnabed 2 years before the rash, said, "I saw Hashem saying, hit the wall, and the sipim are going to start shaking." Okay. So he's predicting an earthquake, and there it says further, Sukkos David Hanefeles. Sukkos David Hanefeles is literally that. Oh, Hashem said, "Shake the Beis Hamikdash," and starts trembling, collapsing. The Heichel started to collapse, literally started to collapse, and I don't know the extent of the damage, but there was smoke thing. And Hashem says, you see, a house is actually fragile. The house is susceptible to earthquakes. After Hashem made the earthquake, now there's now you're a sukkah. Now the Beis Hamikdash is just a sukkah, or it should be just a sukkah, because that's what you need to protect you from earthquakes. Now Hashem is going to establish. Okay, so we see now, there's a connection between the sukkah, Beis Hashem, and the rash. And I want to explain to you what this all means. But the Sukkos David and Nefeles is pshutai. Sukkos David is the Beis Hamikdash, and Nefeles because there was this earthquake. Yeah.
Keep some up, like.
Yeah, where we had till now.
Right.
Okay. The main point was, and now I'll explain what's going on over here, is that in these nevuos about Sukkos, Micha and Zechariah, there's also a rash, also an earthquake, and there's this idea that when you have an earthquake, you don't want to not have a house, rather you want to have a booth, because that's what's safe in an earthquake. And we have this idea that when Hashem returns to Yerushalayim, there shouldn't be houses in Yerushalayim, and that when Hashem returns to Yerushalayim, there's going to be an earthquake. So I'm just showing a theme, symbolism, and I'm going to explain what it means. That Hashem's presence and having a house are antithetical. Like that's what Yechezkel says. Hashem has a problem with the fact that we have a house. Think he has a house and we could also have a house? No. So what should we have? We should just have sukkahs. And in fact, again, going back to the symbol itself, and then we'll get to the symbolism, what it means. When Hashem returns, it's dangerous to have a house. You don't want to have a house, like the Navi says, go out into the field. Okay, just sketching that out. Now explain to what that means. And notice, till now we spoke about the purpose of a sukkah in case we're in Golus. But now we're talking about a sukkah in Eretz Yisrael, or in outside of Yerushalayim, right? Because Yerushalayim is going to be, according to Yechezkel, the whole Yerushalayim is going to be the Beis Hamikdash, and we're going to run away from Yerushalayim and not have a bias. So it's likely we should have a bias. Okay. So what's that about? Okay. So here's what I want to explain what the symbolism is. Okay. We're good? Okay. Okay. So I want to explain what the symbolism is. What's Golus? Golus is a state of us not having Das Hashem, not having familiarity with Hashem. And okay,
That is Golus.
that is Golus. That is the essence of Golus. I mean, literally Golus means not having a land, but the essence of Golus is Gola Ami Mibli Das, right? Like Yeshua says, Gola Ami Mibli Das. Good. Now, that's the essence of Golus. But Golus has something else. Golus teaches us. Golus puts us in a physically puts us in a situation where we can't have Das Hashem. We don't have a land. We don't have a land. We don't have experience of Hashem. What are we experiencing instead? We're experiencing whatever the experience of the various nations are in Golus. Okay? So I would suggest that to put this all together, the idea is the following. That the teaching of Golus, which is that you don't have Das Hashem, you don't know Hashem, is something we have to bring back to Gula. You know what we said so far. We had a sukkah of Golus, we have a sukkah in Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem is opposed to us having a bias in Eretz Yisrael. The fact that Hashem is opposed to us having a bias in Golus, we understand. Why is Hashem opposed to us having a bias in Golus? Because then you become a Mitzri. Then you identify with that particular culture, that particular das. The chiddush of Lasid Lavid, the chiddush of this Gula of Zechariah of Yechezkel, is that you shouldn't have a bias in Eretz Yisrael either. Which means to say, if you're kavua, if you're set in a certain point, and this is my das, I completed Das Hashem, I know what it is. And I could be kaveya, I could define something and limit myself and put down roots and say, I'm done, I know exactly what I need to do, then that's something that indicates that you don't have proper Das Hashem. So in other words, what the idea is like this. The essence of Das Hashem requires not to be kavua. So the symbolism, the meaning, the nimshal of the fact that Hashem has a problem with us having a house next to His. And the nimshal of the fact that when Hashem will return, and Hashem could come, but then there's going to be an earthquake, and you don't belong there. The nimshal is that, you know what it means for Hashem to be present? It means for you to not be kavua. Why? Because the essence of having Das Hashem is to know that there's always more to know. There's always more to know, and they're not complete. And if you're going to think my Das Hashem is complete, and the same way Hashem has a house, I can have a house, which is to say, I could be kavua, I could be set, I'm done, I know exactly what I need to do. I know exactly how I need to live. I'm no longer searching, which is to say, in a certain sense, I'm no longer in exile. Again, as I'm saying, exile has a true teaching, which is that we're always, to some extent, in exile, because none of us has a house except for Hashem. All of us are only getting closer to Hashem. Hashem is the only thing that's kavua. And if you want Hashem to be b'tzaychenu, what you need to do is not be kavua. So the reason why when Hashem comes is a rash, and you build a sukkah. It doesn't mean, in the mashal it means, okay, it's very scary for Hashem to show up, there's an earthquake and so on and so forth. But the nimshal is that having the presence of Hashem in you involves recognition that whatever it is you have is a sukkah. Whatever you have is not kavua. Your house is not kavua.
So the rash
that's the presence of Hashem.
What's the rash?
In the nimshal. In the nimshal, the rash is that
Hashem coming is what?
Hashem coming means us being aware of Hashem.
Okay, that's
and yes, and the nimshal of the rash is that we feel that whatever it is we have, it could be the most perfect opinion, is really nothing. Maybe we have to knock it down tomorrow and build something new. And we have no permanence. We're not in a state of permanence because we're open to infinite das, and therefore, and that's a quality of seeking das Hashem is. quality of having a quality of having Das Hashem, not seeking that. The quality of having Das Hashem is knowing that there's always more, and therefore the only kriyas you could have is the binyan arai, as it were. The binyan arai in Eretz Yisrael, which really a binyan arai teaches you how to be Gola properly. But the Kamash Malon over here is that Golus is not just an aberration. That okay, Halavai we didn't need Golus. Halavai Avram Avinu wouldn't have said Bama Eda, wouldn't have brought us down to Golus. No, there's something necessary in Avram Avinu's Bama Eda. Has to go through a process of Golus, and Golus is terrible, and Gula is good. But the Bama Eda teaches us something about Gula also. The fact that Das Hashem is never complete is maybe the essential quality, but certainly unessential quality of the searching for Das Hashem. So Ba Hashem Elokai Kol Kadoshim Yimach involves a rash. What does a rash do? A rash knocks down all those binam that are kavua. Doesn't knock down the one who's like, okay, I'll put it back up tomorrow because it's a sukkah. He doesn't mind the rash. And in an imshal, what that means is, if your mindset is that everything you think you know, tomorrow you can change your mind because you're looking for something more. Then that's Ba Hashem Elokai. Then you're searching Hashem. But if your mindset is I'm done, I'm completed, that's that's finite. That's
You're always moving closer to where you already have. It's true.
What if that?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, that's a sukkah. Because the fact that you know that you still have more means it's not going to be built. It's not sure
Yeah, you have a half house.
So it has 10 tefachim. It's not a
Right, it's a mikvah. I think so.
But it can't just
The
be knocked
sukkah
down.
goes, the sukkah right
But that sukkah
Oh, the
could just be
Hainu Af, I'm
knocked
saying
down
the
by a sukkah could just be blown away.
Right? Okay.
They're both are right.
What?
They're both not kavua.
They're both are right. Golos is the essence of not being.
From different things. So one of them is not kavua because I don't like the sukkah bad service. I'm
Right.
not agree with that.
Right.
One of them is not kavua because kavua itself is a problem.
Right. So now you have a deeper question of how these two things relate to each other, which I'm not going to go into now. In other words, the short answer is
Also a side.
No,
That's not what we did at the end.
What? Yeah.
We had a curse you that
We have a sukkah of Golos, we have a sukkah of Gula.
What's right? Yeah, two sukkahs.
No, I don't want to be two sukkahs. I'm one
So
sukkah.
making one.
The answer is one sukkah
The
because
sukkah is also in the previous basically. That's
right, the sukkah, right, even the Das Hashem is in order for it to withstand the rash means that don't think it's complete. How that connects to Golos is because Golos teaches us in a way that we're supposed to now know. We wouldn't know that if not for Golos. Okay? We need to recognize the incompleteness of Das in a way that hurts for us to always live with that incompleteness even when we're in a state of things being acceptable. Okay, that's the short answer to that. Okay, so in case you need to be sin, you need to do aveira, you need to have what you recognize as not having das in order to bring it back into a constant state of bikush, adas, but knowing that you're not complete. So these people who are lo yodu machshavos Hashem, these people who lo yodu machshavos Hashem, they think they know everything. They think they know. In other words, the essence of the Muhammad, the Safti is called Agoyim Yerushalayim Muhammad, is that people are opposed to Das Hashem. People are opposed to this search of Das Hashem, which is endless, which is infinite. They want to be Magbel things. They want to be Magdir things. They want to say, this is it. This is Hashem. It's finite. He's finite in one way or another. Each religion has its own way of being Magbel Hashem. Yodu Machshavos Hashem means the people who think they are Yedeya, people who think they completed, they understand everything, because they have a paradigm, they have a kind of, it's called Das Elim Acher. They're the true not Yodim. They're the true not knows. Right?
The dominant religion today of the Western world of atheism is the refusal to accept something that they can't understand.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the creation of systems that are self-contained.
Oh, that's the original Galus Yavim that's still with us today.
Yeah, and it's taken on all sorts of different permutations. Lo yodu machshavos Hashem. If they knew machshavos Hashem, they would understand that they don't know. Right? Meaning, the machshavos Hashem, to know the machshavos Hashem is to understand there are things that are unknowable. That's the thing that they're kaifering. And in Mela, their war is against those who say that there's that Hashem is infinite and there's always more to know. It's always been the war against Hashem, meaning those who want to build houses, those who want to be kaveh things and limit things, are threatened by the Bnei Yisrael who won't build houses.
And that
Always
Zara of Bais Rishon and before Galus Yelvin was also that the concept that they understood that there's a LAK like him above
Right.
all, but he's unknowable.
He's a no, but don't do
So
with
the
us.
only
Right.
one that we're going to worship is the God that we can know.
Correct. And we have to define God to what we can know. We have to define God to what we can know. So the irony is that those are the lo yodu machshavos Hashem, and if you want to be leman yedu are those who recognize and accept and deal with the fact that there's something beyond knowledge. Those are the leman yedu.
Accepting the sukkah and rejecting the bias.
Exactly. The bias is the kviyas, what appears to be das, because we know here's what I want. I know I need 4 walls. I know I need this. I need that, and I have a plan. My house is going to withstand this and that. And what the Rash says is that Lamaisa, ultimately there's something, and that's called Hashem Elikai, and nothing kavua stands in the face of that. And as long as you think something kavua could abut the Beis Hashem, then you're misunderstanding Hashem. That's tumah. That's what you tell. As long as you have a bias in Yerushalayim, that's tumah. Because what you're doing is you think Hashem is limited. Because you think you and Hashem can live next to each other.
What there is Das Hashem, just know this.
Yeah, I'm saying the
No,
definition
not.
of Das Hashem is to know that Hashem is. Yeah. Okay, that we'll have to. At least it's an essential quality of Das Hashem.
Essential quality. A lot of
Yeah.
this, a lot of things are probably essential.
Fine, this needs a different. Right? This
How
needs
about
an
the
achievement.
Keteris play a role?
What's that?
How does the Keteris play a role in the Rash?
The Keteris?
Yeah.
Not clear. To me.
Okay.
Not clear. So that's it. That's the battlefield. The battlefield between us and the Asaftes Galagoyim is right there. So the Korah Pizurenim Ben Agoyim, the tefillah is that our thoughts and our mindsets, our midas, that are captured and influenced by the Goyim in this way of saying, this is what a God is, or this is what the world is. Same thing. Doesn't matter. The atheist. The point is that they want to be magbil, be magadir. That's where the Muhammad is, and the Asafti is called Goyim, and that's why lo yodu machshav Hashem. Why? How's Hashem being oisiv them? How's Hashem? We start with the question. Hashem is being oisiv them, and they don't know. Because essentially what they're doing is they're forcing themselves to deny something that's subconscious, this notion of Hashem being infinite. They're forcing themselves to deny it, so they think they're acting rationally, right? Exactly, and they have their issues with the Jews, whatever they may be. But really, this truth, which is called Hashem, this is really what's motivating them. And those who are waging war against Hashem won't even admit it, because that doesn't make any sense. What do you mean you're waging war against Hashem? But they are. But that's what they're doing. And that's the pasuk saying. Gosafti, they're being led by Hashem to do what? To deny that there's a thing called Hashem. But it's Hashem doing that. It's Hashem doing that means because even their denial of Hashem, why is Klal Yisrael? Why are they dissented? Why are they dissented? Because this is the big problem that people have. Why? I'm not sure. I'll say this. This is the big problem. Can there be something unknown? Can there be something beyond? Or are we going to build a world that can withstand the rash and lives forever, that lasts forever? This is the big question. And this is what the Muhammad is about. This is the Muhammad is about. And Laman Yedu, the response to the Muhammad is to announce, no, there's something unknowable. There's something unknowable. And by the way, if you tell them, once you tell them this, they can't fight. Why? Because lo yodu machshavos Hashem ki kibtzum kamagar. They're not fighting. If they knew what they were fighting against, of course they wouldn't fight. If we had announced, you should know. Okay, you should know. Here's exactly what you're fighting about. Oh, they're not willing to fight on those terms. They're only fighting because lo yodu machshavos Hashem ki kibtzum kamagar. Once you make them aware of it, then there's no fight. So that's my suggestion.
It has to be the pshat and pasuk as well.
How to fight back. No, 1 second. So you're saying that's why I'm answering your question. You said, why are we fighting? Hashem is fighting. That's the end. Both fighting. Hashem is fighting because we're bringing out Hashem. The lo yodu machshavos Hashem is why they're fighting. So by bringing out machshavos Hashem, which means, by the way, machshavos Hashem means that about Hashem which we can't know. So it's called machshava. It's not the dvar Hashem. By bringing out that there's such a thing called machshavos Hashem, and by responding, okay, you should, very nice, you're doing this, but I want you to know. Let me try to bring out your subconscious a little bit, draw out what's really motivating you in a way that you don't even know, and tell them what it is. You tell the signim what it is, call it out. This is my mahalach to join. If you want to join the Mechamas Hashem, Yatz Hashem.
It has to be because I think it says in Yeshai, so it's already possible that it can't be when the pasuk is now saying that they don't know that Machshavas Hashem. Lechatchila, it can't mean that they would know because it's impossible
Right.
to know. Elamai, it has to be referring to.
They don't know that there is such a thing as Machshavas Hashem. Is that what you're saying?
It has to be.
It has to
It
be.
has to be because it can't be the
Because
Right.
it can't
know
be.
the
Right.
There was no Havamina that
Right.
they would know the Machshavas Hashem to say that
Correct.
maybe they would know, but they happen not to know
Exactly.
because there was never a Havamina.
Right.
Elamai, what it means to say is
They don't realize that there's such a thing called Machshavas Hashem, and if they would, in other
there's
words,
a-
that's things
that they're
unknowable.
subconscious that they're fighting
Right,
against.
exactly. There's something deep down that they don't even know that they're fighting against, and I'm suggesting once you bring that out, that's V'yotz Hashem. V'yotz Hashem, V'nilcham. That's how we can become that pasuk V'yotz Hashem. It's Hashem doing it, like Yaakov is best. It's not us. No, I think that's something we're doing. V'yotz Hashem, we bring out Hashem. We bring out this is our mitzvah in this war. We bring out Hashem by telling them you're lo yodu Machshavas Hashem, and that's the only reason you're doing it. And it's a safti, it's Hashem leading you by the nose. You tell them that. That's the way to start.
Maybe you can say a bit further on the concept of Rash. That this could be related a bit further. So the Rash comes from, you said that all the other Malachi Asharis are coming as well. We know that the
Right.
concept of Malachi Asharis are terrifying. We know that Yeshua was terrified when he saw Malach. The Shrofim by Fanim Bechai Sakayas. And one of the concepts, the difference between a Malach and a human being is that the Malachim stay in the same spot. They can't
Malchim. They're oimdim.
They're oimdim, and what's terrifying about them is that their wings are flapping so fast, the chulam they make, and that's what creates the rash.
Right.
So the vart is that the rash is coming from the fact that they're oimdim and they cannot grow, which is a reference to the entire thing. Masha Enkim human.
So from oimdim ma'aloi, Shai said. So from oimdim.
And that oimdim is what creates the rash, because they're flapping the wings but they can't move. And that creates the terrible rash. So when it says that the malachim are coming, malachim represent the actual perfection of full das of Hashem, because they know full das of Hashem relative to their station. Mashenkin, human beings, which is what you're saying, always have to recognize that we always have to grow. And once we do grow, what's good? What does Yecheskel say? That's going to be Bachar Sheyomim. That we're going to have the Yetzer Hara is going to move away. Once the Yetzer Hara goes away, we're talking going to reach to Ketz of Yimalei Aretz and Das Hashem. So we that's after Geula comes full das.